going in. Body cams. Assault Group Beta, take southwest corridor. The rest of you on me. Collins, take point.
Looks pretty abandoned.
No contact yet. Wait. What the hell is that? Corporal, they're right on you. Fall back, Beta. Fall back.
Contact 12 o'clock!
Hey everybody, so today we're going to run a game of Legions of Steel Operation Anvil. So right here I've got a setup of a typical scenario. It's kind of like a meeting of engagement scenario. And the objective for both forces, of which there are the humans, the United Nations of Earth Commandos, and you have the Legions of Steel, the machines. And the basic objective in this game is to eliminate the opposing forces. So the first thing I want you to know about the game is that, let's talk about the sides. So the machines come with 5 G12 Nightmares, which are each carry a knock-mocker grenade. It's a grenade that creates a field of blackness that makes it difficult to fire through. And they also have the Mark 7 Assault Fiend. And this guy here needs 2 hits to be eliminated from the game, while all the other figures only need 1 hit to be eliminated. Plus, it's super powerful with its weapons. The Nightmares are armed with Deadbolt Launchers, and the Mark 7 Assault Fiend has a Napalm-X Flame Weapon and a Power Trident that it can use for hand-to-hand combat. Now, the humans are a little bit different. You get 4 humans, 4 commandos. 1 is a sergeant. He has leadership points that can be used to help influence the game as you go along. 2 regular commando troopers and a heavy weapon trooper. Now, the sergeant and the 2 troopers come with K-Pulse grenades and force wall grenades. Now, K-Pulse grenades are like frag grenades. You can take out several opposing miniatures or figures at one shot, while the force wall grenades create a field of force that basically blocks the enemy. It could be used for defensive measures or just to help divert where your enemy is going from. The heavy weapon trooper is carrying a plasma projector. That's like a high gain plasma weapon that is kind of like a flamethrower. It's, very deadly at close range and has multiple dice that you can use to attack it with. While the regular troopers carry blasters. Now, each side has a squad sheet, and the squad sheet kind of gives you the cheat notes for what you need to hit with each weapon. For example, the Deadbolt Launcher needs to roll a hit number of 4+, in other words, a 4 or better on a 6-sided die, out to 25 squares. So as long as someone's within 25 squares, you're going to have a 4+ to hit them, plus any particular modifiers like line of sight modifiers, or if your figure has RAN, then that will affect also what their chance is to hit. So that's the basic concepts. Everything you have here is for you. The game also comes with a charts and tables, which has a lot of the information on it, so for quick reference. Okay, so here we are with a scenario. Now this is the prototype version. A lot of this has been handmade, and parts of it are like good representations of how it's going to look in the game. But for example, the board pieces, which you get 32 in the game, like they normally will have jigsaw kind of like locking places. So when you put them together, they'll all lock in place. These ones are just plain squares. Here we have a scenario. It's only using 9 of the 32, so it's a small little compact mission or scenario. But certainly with using more squares and with the snares that come with the game, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. All right, so here we have it laid out. We have entry points for the machines marked with the M counters, and the human commando entry points here, the blue ones with the yellow entry squares. That's where you can enter your troops. Okay, so in the game itself, there are, basically it's composed of rounds. So each round, you have an initiative segment where you roll to see who gets initiative. Then you have 2 turns. Each player has a set of turns, and then there's the end segment. So we're going to get right into the game now. The first thing we're going to do is roll for initiative. Oh, I forgot to mention that about the leadership. So the leadership of the sergeant can be used to influence initiative. In other words, that figure can use up its leadership, 1 or 2, it has 2 leadership, to help have the commandos win the initiative roll. In this case, we're just starting, so the sergeant's not going to use any of its leadership for initiative. So we'll have the commandos roll first. The commando rolls a 1, and now the machines are going to roll. Higher roll chooses who goes initiative. and the machines roll a 4, which means the machines win initiative. All right. So, tactically at this point, the machines will let the commandos go. That way they get an idea of where the commandos are coming on the board and how they're going to handle it. So let's do this. What I'm going to do as the commando is enter the game of play. The first half square counts as a movement. Now, each commando has 4 movement points. So if they're walking, if you decide to walk your commando, then they will have 4 movement points. If you decide to run your commando, they will have 8 movement points. But when you run, things are harder to hit, and if you're turning or doing any sort of maneuvering, that's a little bit more expensive. It uses up more points. So let's take this guy, and let's say we're going to walk this guy. So his first half square is 1, 2, 3, and then 1 movement point to turn, 4. So they've used up their 4 action points. At this point, he's got nothing to fire at, so they've finished their movement, and I will take one of their action dice. Every figure gets an action die. Now, since he walked, he's considered to be covering. In other words, he didn't fire his weapon, so he's preparing to fire at the first opportune moment. And walking gives you a 1 covering, which adds 1 to your hit number when you're trying to hit someone, making it a little bit harder to hit. In other words, if you don't move, it's easier to hit. If you walk, it's a little bit harder, and if you ran, it's even harder. So there he has a 1 covering. Now I have 3 more figures to move. So I've decided there's 2 entry points. I'm going to bring in my second trooper on this side, and instead of walking, I'm going to run them. So they're going to run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it took 2 to turn, because when you're running it takes 2 to turn, when you're walking it takes 1 to turn. Now they've run. It's a 2 modifier for running, so we put the action die 2 beside that figure. As you notice, there's something here. That's an obstacle. That's a low obstacle, and he's able to fire over that obstacle. These are all low obstacles in this particular scenario. If you're designing your own scenario, you can choose obstacles, put them wherever you want, decide if they're high obstacles or low obstacles. In this case, he's basically has partial cover from this. If an opponent tries to fire at him through that square that contains the obstacle, they will have a +1 to hit him, making it harder to hit him, of course. So 2 more characters to move. I'm going to walk on this character, this commando here. So he's going to walk 1, 2, 3, 4. And like before, he'll be a covering 1. There's his action die. And then my sergeant. Now my sergeant with the leadership, that stays with the sergeant for the whole round, for their whole turn. And he can elect to use it at any point, either to, for example, affect a die roll, or to have a figure move out of turn, and that sort of thing. So it's a very, very powerful tool, is having these leadership points. And that's kind of the advantage that the commandos have. So I'm going to walk the sergeant as well. Half squares 1, 2, 3, and turn 4. Again, covering -1. Now, I've moved and finished all the actions for my figures, so now it's the machine's turn. The machine's turn, like I said, they have 5 G12 Nightmares, each with a knockmocker, and they have their Mark 7 Assault Fiend. So what they have going for them is they have superior numbers, and the Mark 7 Assault Fiend is extremely deadly. All right, so what are we going to do? Well, these are our entry points. We kind of see where the commandos have set up. They're covering, this person's actually covering this area, so potentially could fire anyone coming out. Fire at any figure that presents itself within line of sight, right? So it depends how fast you want to get in action. Let's keep it safe to start. So we're going to have the first Nightmare run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I'm going to end his movement here. And since he ran, he's covering 2. The next one will walk. 1, 2, 3, 4. Since he walked, he's only covering 1. Mark it down so you can see that. The Mark 7 Assault Fiend actually has a movement points of 5. So everyone else has 4, but it's a little bit faster. Now, so if I walk with him, he gets to move a total of 5 spaces. Or use a total of 5 movement points. So let's get him, there's like overwhelming odds on that side. So let's bring him into combat here. We'll bring him on this side. So he's going to walk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there we go. We mark him with a +1. Right now we're all about moving and putting our guys in one place. Now we don't want to group them too much, so we'll bring these 3 on here. First one will run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Minus +2. Second will walk 1, 2, 3, 4. +1. Put the action die beside them. And the last one will walk 1, 2, 3, and turn 4. Okay. Now he's covering 1 as well. At this point, everything's moved. Second turn's completed. It's the end segment. In the end segment, if there was a knockmocker on the board, the knockmockers last for 2 turns. So any knockmocker that was thrown this turn would remain for this turn. And in the end segment, you would flip it, indicating that it would continue to exist until the next turn and then be removed on the next turn. The flip side is a gray side, while the first is a black side. So you'll know it's kind of fading away. That's kind of the indication for that. Okay, so we finished it. There's no knockmockers. The end segment, nothing happens. We're into the second round. The second round, we have to roll for initiative. Now, the commando still has his 2 leadership. At this point, he can decide to use them again for initiative. I will consider not using them. So we're going to go for a naked roll. So the humans, or the United Nations of Earth Commandos, they roll first. Let's see what they got. They get a 4. That's their roll. And the machines get a 6. So in fact, the machines can choose whether they want to go first or not. In this case, they'll allow the humans to go again. I guess kind of basic, it's early on, so you're going to kind of see what they're going to do and kind of like react to them as opposed to be reacted against. So now the human, it being their turn, will firstly remove his action dice. So they're gone. So now we're going to start fresh. And we're going to know which will move because as we move them, we put the action dice down. The sergeant has their 2 leadership. At this point, they could assign this leadership to anyone that they want on the board. When you assign a leadership, you just give it to them. That they kind of carry it around for the turn. If they decide to use it, they can use it to get basically a better chance of scoring a hit. They can use it to move a little bit further. There's many different options that you can use with it. But for now, the sergeant's going to retain both of their leadership points. So, what are we going to do? Well, this particular heavy weapon trooper is going to decide to not move at all, which means that they're covering 0. So there we have our covering 0 down. Well, I'm going to elect with this character also to have covering 0. They're basically going to be stationary. Now here, the sergeant's going to walk. And now there's a door in front of them, so how do you handle a door? Walking the figure. 1 moving point. 2 moving points to open the door. And they will, at this point, move no further. So they've moved, they haven't fired their weapon, they're covering 1. And this particular trooper here, we will decide to, well, now that I'm thinking about it, I would have moved him, but I've already finished his turn, so I can't move him, so I could get this guy through. In this case, I will use this trooper to support the sergeant. They're going to walk. Now, they can walk backwards. They can't run backwards, they can walk backwards. Instead of the 1 movement points it takes to move forward, it takes 2 to move back. So 1, 2 to move back, 3 to turn. They've used 3 of their points, and they're going to end their turn there, covering -1. Okay. Now, it's the machine's turn. So, in the machine's turn, they can remove, the first thing they do is remove all their covering. So they're done. So that now we know that none of them have moved or done anything at this turn. As you put down your counters, you will start to, you'll know basically what they've done and that they've gone. So in the machine's turn, I think we're going to walk the Mark 1 assault fiend. So he's going to walk. So he opens the door, 1 movement point. 2, 3, 4, 5. He's walked, he's covering +1. He's covering 1 because he only walked. Now, these guys are going to try to engage the humans right here. But because they have knockmocker grenades that help protect them, we're going to have this character here throw a knockmocker grenade. And what he will do is firstly turn, so I have to announce what he's doing. So he can't throw in his back arc, he can't throw backwards, right? But he can throw in his front arc, and the front arc is the first square and then the 2 squares beside that in a triangle that arc out. So he's going to walk. So he goes 1, 2, 3, and then he wants to throw, he's the red one, so he'll throw his grenade here, his knockmocker grenade. Now because it's right in front of him, it's impossible to miss. How you roll to hit a square with your grenade, whether it's a knockmocker or a force wall or whatever, is you roll 2 dice, and as long as you roll higher than the amount of squares away, the figure where you want to throw it to is your target. In this case 1, you have to roll more than 1 on 2 dice, which he rolls a 5, and so hits that square. Now the knockmocker affects the square it's in and the surrounding 9 squares. So all of this stuff here is knockmockered. And he's fired. He's thrown his grenade. That means he's fired. So we're going to put a red fired symbol beside him. Okay, so let's just go for it. The one thing also about the G12s is they're immune to their own knockmarker, so it doesn't affect them. It does affect the Mark 7 assault fiend, but it won't affect them. So this knockmarker, which gives a +2 to hit number, it adds +2 to the hit number, is very useful for the machine. So he's going to go ahead. He feels very safe because he's got this +2. So he goes ahead, walking 1, 2. Now he's just opened himself up to be fired at. You have these 2 figures that can fire at him at this point. They have blasters. Before he gets the fire, the opposing player can choose to use their covering fire. So in this case, of course, the commando sergeant would like to fire at him, hopefully destroying him and therefore eliminating him and not being fired on himself. So what does the commando need? The commando has a blaster, and on his chart, you can see that it either needs a 3+ within 5 squares or a 4+ within 15 squares. Now, let's count the squares to the target. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The target is 6 squares away, meaning that the commando has a 4 or better to roll on 1 die to inflict the hit, eliminating the figure. So we know he needs a 4+, but he's firing through a knockmocker, which means he needs a 6+. Plus he's covering +1, which means he needs a 7+. So it's impossible for him to roll a 7 or better on 1 die. So what to do? Well, in this case, seeing that my odds are impossible, the leader will spend 1 of his leadership to move his figure out of the way. It's a very powerful tool. He's still covering, but he's moved his figure out of the way. And also, considering that the second trooper will not be able to defeat the Nightmare, he uses his other leadership to move it out of the way. So he commands it, basically tells the guy, like as if he's in combat, hit the deck, get out of the way. He's basically really ordering his men to do stuff. So he's effectively, he pushes him over, and now, because this Nightmare can't fire at anyone, and it chose to fire, it basically fires and there's nothing there, so it's still marked as if it was fired, so we mark it fired. Okay, where are we at now? We can decide to move this character out, walking. So we'll move out this knot. So he walks out, he's going to walk 1. At this point, the commando can fire at him. Now what I'm going to try to do is I want to get the commando to fire and use up his shot so someone else can then hopefully attack him. So as soon as he comes out in the view, I can choose to fire. Now this is a low obstacle. If I was further back, I would use this as an obstacle that would affect its chance to hit, but because I'm right beside it, that is not the case. it doesn't have any modifier against them. It's just like you're behind like a bulkhead or like crates, and you're like firing over the crate. So it's not affecting you because it's too close to you. So let's see how many squares away he is to fire. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 squares, and he's firing with the blaster. And the blaster needs a 4+ to hit at this range. So there's no modifiers. He's got a 4+, and at this point I can choose to auto fire the weapon if I wanted to. So that's one of the options. You can choose to fire your weapon normally, or you can choose to auto fire your weapon. There are a few other options as well. So in this case, he needs a 4+ on one die to score a hit. If he chooses to auto fire, meaning he gets to roll 2 dice, it adds a +1 to either die. So then he will need a 5 or a 6 to score a hit, but he gets 2 dice. Now, when you roll the dice, you don't add them together. You just look at each one individually. So let's say he's going to fire his weapon, and he's going to try to take out that nightmare. He's fired, he rolls 2 dice. A 5 or 6 on either die will eliminate that nightmare. And I rolled a 4 and a 3. So he misses. So that's it for him. He's fired his weapon and he's missed. This nightmare still gets to go. It decides to keep walking, of course, so it spent 1, 2, and moves backwards, 3 or 4. Now, the nightmare wants to fire at the commando. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 squares away. 9 squares for a deadbolt launcher requires a 4 or better, so a 4 or better on one die. But he's firing across an obstacle, which is that one. So he needs a 5 or better. It's +1. It's a +1 modifier or line of sight modifier for firing across a low level obstacle. So he needs a 5 or 6 on one die. So he can choose to auto fire, which would give it an additional +1, making it a 6 on 2 dice. But the odds are overall 5 or 6 on one die is a little bit better than 6 on 2 dice. So he's going to give it a shot, and he's going to fire at the commando. And let's see what he gets. So he rolled a 2, meaning he missed. But he is fired. So that's the end of his part of his turn. I've got 2 more nightmares here. So considering this guy can't fire at them anymore, at least the first one's going to go for it. So he's going to walk 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's going to also fire. Again, it's within 25 squares, so he needs a 4+. He's firing across this, so that adds a +1. So he needs a 5 or 6 on one die. So let's see how he does. So I rolled a 1 for him, meaning he missed, but he is also fired. Now, we have one G12 nightmare left. With this one, I'm going to decide to throw a knock mocker over here, basically helping protect them, because if the humans happen to go first, they're going to wipe these guys out. So I knew all along I was going to do that. So let's take our the knock mocker for this little blue guy, and he wants to throw it 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. He wants to throw it onto that square. Well, as we know, to score a hit with a grenade, you roll 2 dice, and as long as those dice are equal to or more than the amount of squares away, you've scored a hit on that square. So 1, 2, 3, 4, which means he needs to roll a 4 on 2 dice or more. So let's see what happens. He rolled a 4, thank goodness. It was close. So knockmocker black side up lands right here underneath this guy. Currently have 2 knockmockers on the board. He's the last figure to go on the machine side. He's marked as fired because he threw his knockmocker. So the second side is gone, and it's the end phase. The end phase is here. All we do at this particular point in the end phase is we flip the knockmarkers over to the gray side, indicating they've been on the board for 1 round. At the end phase of the next turn, those will be removed. Okay, well, we've completed end phase of round 2. Round 3, we have to roll for initiative. The human's sergeant doesn't have any leadership because he used it to save their ass over here. So each side will just roll a d6. So first the humans, they will roll their d6 to see if they get a hit. They roll a 2. Not a hit, they're rolling for their initiative. So their initiative number is 2, the machines roll for initiative, and they rolled a 6. So at this point, the machines definitely want to go first, because if they don't, there's a lot of mayhem that's going to go on. All right, So the first things we do, the machines decide to be the first active player. They will remove all of their action dice, you know, refreshing them all. Okay, now as the machine player, what do we want to do? Well, we know this guy's already fired, and if I have a guy right here, if he stationary fires, he'll have a better chance to take him out. And he's in a knockmocker, so he's protected, at least making it more difficult to hit him by +2. But since the G12 is immune to the knockmocker, it can stay in there and fire without any sort of issues. So this is going to bring up another rule, which is basically firing past the figure. So if this guy wanted to fire at him, he can, but he's firing past another figure, basically kind of blocking his line of sight. So that's going to make it more difficult to hit him. So what I'm choosing to do is the first thing to do is to move this character and this figure and then decide what to do with this one. So let's walk this figure. I'm going to walk it here. 1, 2, 3. And at this point, he's walked, he's going to fire at the commando. So in this case, this does not affect him, this low-level obstacle, again, because he's standing beside it, he's standing behind it. But when you trace the line of fire between these two, if you were connecting the dots, you would see that this one's in the way. So let's see how many squares away he is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 squares away. He needs a 4+, but he's firing across this obstacle and this obstacle. Obstacles can never give more than the +1. So it's +1. So he has a 4 + 1 is 5. So again, like before, he has a 5 or 6 to hit, and he's going to try to eliminate the commando. He rolls a 1, missing. Okay. These guys are firing away. It's just like a firefight, you know, in OK Corral. Everybody's firing, but nobody's dying right away. And you know what? Let's face it, in real combat, people are moving. A lot of things are happening. You know, to score a hit, to score a kill, it's hard. It's not just like, it's a given. All right. Now, he's fired, he's finished. I'm going to use this guy, he's going to be stationary. When you're stationary, when you don't move your figure, you actually get, it's easier for you to hit something. So it subtracts 1 from your 2-hit number. So this figure is 9 squares away, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which means he needs a 4+ to hit with his weapon. But because he's stationary firing, he only needs a 3+, so he needs a 3 or better on 1 die. And he is firing across an obstacle, so he needs a 5+. So his chance to hit on 1 die is 5, he needs a 3 plus the 1 for the obstacle, he needs a 4. So he needs a 4+ on 1 die or 5 or 6 on 2 dice. So odds are better, 5 or 6 on 2 dice. He chooses to auto fire, and he rolls a 5 and a 2. So that's enough to get rid of this guy. So boom, this guy is eliminated. Remove him from the board. Well, it's a tense situation. There's a lot going on, but I think you guys have got an idea of how movement works, how you firing your weapon works. There's a little bit of thing with obstacles, how do you handle doors if you decide to auto fire, and there's a few more other interesting rules and kind of tactical rules and tactical options that you'll get when you're playing the game and get a better feel for it. So at this point, let's just do some assumptions and do some fast forwarding. So one thing that the humans have is grenades. They have the K-Pulse grenade. And the sergeant is going, first of all, when the beginning of the turn, he gets back his leadership, so he has leadership points. And he's going to choose to throw a grenade right on top of this guy. Now, he can't see there, so when you're throwing a grenade and you can't see where you're firing it, you can still throw it because you whip it around corners, all that kind of thing. But instead of 2 dice to hit, he only gets 1 die. And the amount of distance is, the first diagonal square, by the way, is 2. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's impossible for him to hit that, which means he can try to choose to hit the square in front of him where he needs a 6. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to try to throw a grenade and make it land in the square right in front of that character. So he needs a 6 to hit, which isn't great. He misses with a 1. At this point, if you miss, there's a roll-off. It's the only time in the game when there really is a roll-off. So the humans and the machines both roll 1 die. Whoever rolls higher chooses where the grenade lands up to 2 squares away. So the humans roll a 6, the machines roll a 3, which means the humans get to choose where the grenade lands. And in this case, he's going to push the grenade 1 square over, so it actually lands on the figure. Really, with an outcome that the humans kind of wanted. Now, he's fired because he threw the grenade, just to do that. So the grenade, there's a chart with the grenade showing what its hit number is based on the proximity that the target is to the grenade explosion. Whoever's in the square where the grenade lands, the hit number for them is 3 plus on a d6. So we're going to roll first to see if this grenade has taken out that nightmare. On a 3, 4, 5, or 6, it will eliminate the nightmare. It doesn't matter that it's a knock marker because it's an explosive radius, and the fact that you can't see anything doesn't matter. A grenade doesn't care. So let's see if he inflicts a kill. Roll the 4. Great. This nightmare is eliminated. Knock marker still stays there. You can take away its action dice because it's gone. And now we get to roll on this guy. So there's one little thing here. This guy is equivalent to 2 squares away, 1, 2. And on the chart it shows you that the hit number for a figure in that number is 5 plus. So it's harder to destroy a figure that wasn't in the square. That makes sense, right? He's further away from the explosion, so let's roll on a 5 or 6. It will eliminate the second nightmare. A 2 is rolled, so it doesn't affect the second nightmare. The grenade has gone off, and we can just take it away from the board. I'm going to try. I'm worried about this guy here, so I'm going to run this guy. These guys have fired. My choice is to run this guy across and throw a force wall grenade right in front, protecting him. Because these guys have fired, they won't be able to shoot at him, but it'll be imperative to get initiative next turn. Okay, so this guy is running. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Makes it all the way over to here, which is great. He's going to throw a grenade into this square here. A force wall grenade. The force wall grenade is basically a wall of force, as it would indicate the name. And it will basically help protect him from this vicious Mark 7 assault fiend. So, this square is 2 away, 1, 2. So he needs a 2 or better on 2 dice, but he ran, and whenever you run, it's harder to hit your target, so it adds a +1. So he needs a 3 or better on 2 dice to land the grenade right here. And he rolled a 4. Great. He succeeds in doing that, and he's fired. At this point, there's a bit of protection here. I think that I'll play it safe and go covering 0 with my guy here. Covering 0. Great. So now all of the humans have gone, all of the machines have gone. So now it's both the turns are over. It's in the end segment. Okay, so the end segment, let's take a look. One thing we do is we remove all knock markers that are gray that have been flipped, so they're gone now. Each of the nightmares have 1 knock marker, so they've basically lost the knock marker. They can't use it again in this particular scenario. So it's finished. So we'll put them down here. Many of the other scenarios have like special objectives, like getting into a particular room, downloading information from the computer, or maybe transporting a bomb to its final destination so it could be, detonated. So this is just one of the simple ones I chose to start with. But many of the other scenarios have other kind of cool victory conditions, a little bit more in depth, a little bit more, kind of tense depending on what has to happen. And so look, I hope you enjoyed watching this particular demonstration of the game that outlines kind of the basic sets of the rules. And I just want to let you know there's a lot more. And I hope you get a chance to play it. Thank you very much.